In the 16th century, England and Scotland were two separate kingdoms with distinct cultures, religions, and rulers. Life in these kingdoms was shaped by political intrigue, religious turmoil, and centuries of monarchs fighting to secure their power. The struggle for the English throne, however, reached its peak when two powerful women, both with claims to rule, faced off in a bitter rivalry. These women were Elizabeth I of England and Mary, Queen of Scots. In England, the reign of Henry VIII had led to major religious upheaval, with his break from the Catholic Church, establishing the Church of England. This split resulted in years of conflict between Catholics and Protestants. Henry VIII was on a quest for a male heir. The King Henry VIII had 3 male children, with his first wife Catherine of Aragon, but all 3 died before adulthood. Their only surviving child was a daughter, Mary Tudor. As his first wife only gave him a daughter, he decided to divorce her even after the Pope did not approve of this. His second wife, Anne Boleyn, gave birth to a daughter named Elizabeth in 1533, despite Henry's hopes for a son. Her birth was met with disappointment from the king, and her mother, Anne Boleyn, was executed on 1536 when Elizabeth was just 2 years old. The king's first daughter, Mary I, ascended to the throne on 1553. She was a devout Catholic and became known as Bloody Mary for her persecution of Protestants. Mary Tudor, however, died after a short reign, and the next monarch was her half-sister, Elizabeth I. Elizabeth's legitimacy as heir to the throne was always in question. Many Catholics rejected her claim, considering her birth the result of Henry's controversial divorce from his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. Meanwhile, in Scotland, Mary Stuart was born in 1542, the daughter of King James V. Her father's sudden death left her as queen when she was just 6 days old. Mary's childhood was spent in the French court, where she was raised as a Catholic and betrothed to Francis, the Dauphin of France. She eventually married Francis in 1558, becoming Queen of France. Though her reign there was brief, tragedy struck again when Francis died suddenly in 1560. At just 18 years old, Mary returned to Scotland, now facing a divided and tumultuous nation. When Elizabeth I ascended to the throne of England in 1558, after the death of her sister, Queen Mary I, her reign ushered in a time of relative peace and prosperity in England, despite religious conflict. The Protestant Reformation was in full swing, and Elizabeth worked tirelessly to solidify Protestantism in England. At the time of Elizabeth's coronation, Mary had returned to Scotland and was crowned queen, but her kingdom was far from secure. Her rule was challenged by Protestant factions and rebellious nobles who opposed her Catholic faith. Despite their different approaches to faith, both queens made significant achievements during their reigns. Elizabeth strengthened England's naval power, including the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588, and promoted English exploration, with figures like Sir Francis Drake sailing to the New World. She also reformed the English Church, securing the Protestant faith in England and influencing the course of European history. Mary, on the other hand, was less fortunate. She struggled to maintain control over Scotland, which was divided along religious lines. She was forced to abdicate in 1567 after a series of scandals and political upheaval, including her marriage to Lord Darnley, a marriage that ended in tragedy with his murder. Mary's last marriage to the Earl of Bothwell, which was highly controversial, only further alienated her from her nobles and led to her imprisonment. The rivalry between Elizabeth and Mary began to take shape during the early years of Elizabeth's reign. While Elizabeth ruled over a relatively stable Protestant England, Mary's claim to the English throne was seen by many Catholics as stronger, and they considered Elizabeth illegitimate. This set the stage for years of political tension between the two queens. Mary sought Elizabeth's protection, but Elizabeth was wary. Though she recognized Mary's claim as her cousin and fellow monarch, Elizabeth viewed her as a potential threat. Mary was seen as a Catholic figurehead for English rebels who wanted to see Elizabeth deposed. In 1586, the discovery of the Babington Plot, a Catholic conspiracy to assassinate Elizabeth and place Mary on the throne, sealed Mary's fate. Evidence of her involvement in the plot was uncovered, and despite Elizabeth's personal reluctance, she signed Mary's death warrant. On the 8th of February 1587, Mary, Queen of Scots, was executed at Fotheringhay Castle. She was beheaded in front of her servants, the final chapter in a story of political intrigue, betrayal, and religious conflict. Both queens had never met in person. Elizabeth, though deeply sorrowful, faced backlash from the Catholic world, and the execution only fueled more rebellion against her. Elizabeth's reign continued until her death in 1603. By then, she had transformed England into a leading European power, but her decision to remain unmarried left her without an heir. After 45 years on the throne, Elizabeth's death marked the end of the Tudor dynasty. With no direct heir, the throne passed to Elizabeth's closest relative, James VI of Scotland, the son of Mary, Queen of Scots. He became James I of England, uniting the crowns of England and Scotland. His reign brought about the union of the two kingdoms, though they remained separate states until the early 18th century. The story of Elizabeth I and Mary, Queen of Scots, is a tale of ambition, power, betrayal, and loss. Their rivalry left a mark on history that would echo for generations. One secured her legacy in England, while the other, despite her tragic end, was remembered as a martyr in the eyes of many. Their story would shape the future of the British monarchy and the course of European history.